The slave market's cry, the sun above the alien city, burned like fire. The air was thick and strange smells floated through the streets. Sounds of shouting, metal clashing, and creatures crying out filled the space. It was a place where nothing was kind. In this market, everything was for sale: food, weapons, machines, and people. A young human man walked slowly through the crowd. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp. He had seen many things in his travels, but this place felt different, darker. He didn't know why he had come here. Maybe just to pass through. Maybe to find something. Or someone. He passed cages. Some were full of strange alien beings, their faces tired, their eyes empty. No one spoke to him. No one looked at him until he heard it. A voice. Soft. Not a shout. Not a cry. A whisper. "Buy my chains and break them, please." He turned. A cage sat near the edge of the market, almost hidden by dust and smoke. Inside was a woman. She looked young, maybe close to his age. But she was not human. Her skin was a deep blue, like the ocean on Earth. Her long golden hair fell over her shoulders. Dirt and dry blood marked her body, but her eyes were full of fire. The human stepped closer. She looked straight at him. "I will give you strong children," she said. He didn't understand. Why say something like that? Was she begging? Was it a trick? Her voice was low but steady. She didn't sound weak. She sounded serious. The seller laughed from nearby. "Don't listen to her," he said. "She's just a broken one. Pretty face, but nothing useful. I'll sell her cheap." The human didn't answer. He kept looking at the woman. "Please," she said again. "Not for me." "For what's coming?" He asked the seller where she came from. The seller shrugged. No name, no past. "Picked up. Near the edge of the dead zone. Might not live long anyway." The human didn't believe him. He looked at her chains. They were not normal. They looked old, heavy, and strange, almost like they were built to hold something dangerous. He didn't know what to think. Part of him wanted to walk away. But something about her made him stay. She looked like someone who had lost everything, but also like someone who still had something to fight for. "Why me?" he asked her. "Because you can see," she replied. The human stood there, silent. Around him, people started to notice. Some guards watched from the distance. Some other traders leaned closer. The air became still, as if the moment was heavier than it should be. She whispered again, softer this time. "They don't know who I am, but I think you do." A cold feeling ran down his back. He didn't know her, but something inside him agreed with her words. The seller shouted again, "Buy her or move on." The human opened his bag and pulled out the credit chips. He handed them over without another word. The seller grinned and opened the cage. "She's yours now." The woman stepped out, chains still locked around her hands and feet. She looked at the human and nodded. "Thank you." But just as they turned to leave, the ground shook slightly. A sound came from the sky, faint, like metal wings. Far above them, a dark shape moved behind the clouds, and far behind them, someone whispered, "He bought her?" Something had begun. Something bigger than anyone in the market could see. The deal that shouldn't happen. He had bought her. But he didn't feel like an owner. And she didn't act like a slave. The human didn't even know her name. The seller had called her nothing, just a thing to sell. But now, as she walked beside him, still in chains, her steps were strong and quiet. She didn't cry. She didn't thank him again. She just walked like someone who knew exactly what needed to happen next. They moved away from the market quickly. The human thought it was over. But trouble was just beginning. 2 guards stepped in front of them, tall, armored, armed, their faces hidden behind black masks. One raised a hand. "You bought her?" the guard asked. His voice was calm, but cold. Human nodded. Yes, she's mine now. The guards didn't move. One of them leaned in close. Return her. You don't know what she is. I bought her legally, the human replied. The second guard laughed a short, sharp sound. Some things should not be sold. Some things should not be touched. That's when she stepped forward, the woman. The one with blue skin and golden hair. She looked straight at the guards. She spoke one sentence. Not in human language. Not in the trade language. It was something ancient. The guards froze. Then, like they had been struck by lightning, both of them stepped back. Their heads lowered slightly, and without another word, they turned and disappeared into the crowd. The human blinked. What did you say? She looked at him with calm eyes. Nothing they expected to hear. He didn't ask again. They walked through the side alleys, deeper into the lower part of the city. She moved like someone who knew the shadows. Her chains clinked with each step, but no one dared stop them. At one point, she turned to him and said, Do you still want to break my chains? He looked at the strange metal holding her wrists. Yes, but I don't know how. She nodded. Then we'll find someone who does. He finally asked, What's your name? She looked up at the sky for a moment, then answered, Karel. Where are you from? He asked. Far, she said, and long forgotten. That answer made him quiet again. Something in her voice told him not to push more. Soon, they reached a quiet place outside the city walls. A junkyard full of old machines, metal parts, and broken robots. Karel sat down on a piece of scrap, breathing slowly. Her skin glowed faintly under the moonlight. The chains seemed to pull at her energy, like they were alive. He sat across from her. Why did the guards fear you? She didn't answer. Instead, she looked him in the eyes and said, Because I was not born to serve, I was born to lead. And they remember what my kind once did. He swallowed hard. What did your kind do? She smiled, not with happiness, but with memory. We built empires. We gave life to children who shaped worlds. That is why they keep me locked. Not because I am weak, but because I carry what they fear. The human felt the weight of her words. He realized then he had not saved her. He had released something powerful, something ancient, something the galaxy tried to forget. And now he was part of it. Escape into the storm, the city. Behind them was no longer safe. After what Karel said to the guards, everything changed. Whispers spread. People began to talk. She has the mark. The lost one speaks again. The bloodline isn't dead. The human didn't understand most of it. But he knew one thing: someone, somewhere, would try to take her back. They didn't sleep that night. Karel led him through secret paths. The stars above were dull behind the storm clouds, and the air smelled of dust and heat. She moved quickly, even with the chain still holding her. He asked her, Where are we going? Far from eyes, she said, to the deep places, the places they fear. Before dawn, they reached the edge of the city. In the distance, wide deserts waited. Red sand, broken hills, and a sharp wind that never stopped. Few dared to cross that land. But Karel walked forward like it was home. They passed old machines half buried in sand. Some were once used for war. Others were forgotten tools from a lost time. She touched one of them gently and whispered, They use these against my people. He asked, Why did they stop? She looked at him with a tired smile. Because we didn't break. We only disappeared. As they moved further into the wasteland, the wind grew stronger. A storm was coming. The sky turned gray, and lightning danced far away. The human pulled his coat tighter. Karel didn't flinch. By midday, they reached an old shelter made of stone and metal, hidden beneath a hill. Inside it was cool and quiet. Karel sat down at the center, her chains resting on the floor like dead snakes. The human sat beside her. "I have questions," he said. She nodded. "Ask." "What do you mean by strong children?" Carell closed her eyes for a moment. Then, in a soft voice, she answered, "My people were not just warriors. We were life givers. Our children were stronger, faster, smarter, born with balance between emotion and power. We were mothers of destiny. But others feared what our blood could create." The human listened carefully. "So they chained you to stop you from creating?" "Yes," she said. "They thought if we couldn't birth, we couldn't rise again." He was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Why me?" She opened her eyes. "Because you don't look at me like a thing. You don't ask how much I'm worth. You ask what I know." There was silence between them. But it wasn't empty. It was heavy, like the silence before thunder. Then she said something he didn't expect. "My body may be chained, but something inside me is waking up." The human looked at her carefully. "What do you mean?" Carell raised her arms. A faint light pulsed under her skin. The chains grew warm. The air inside the shelter changed. It felt alive. "These chains were made to stop my kind," she said. "But time weakens all things, even fear." Suddenly the ground shook. Not much, but enough to make the human stand up fast. Outside, the wind howled louder. Dust rose in thick waves. A storm was here. But inside the shelter, something else was rising. Carell looked calm. Her eyes glowed gently, and her voice was steady. "They will come for us," she said. "But this time, I won't run. I will rise." The human stared at her, not with fear, but with something new. Respect. And maybe belief. Asterisk. The hidden power within the storm outside raged for hours. Dust slammed against the shelter walls. Lightning cracked across the sky. The world beyond was lost in red clouds and thunder. But inside, everything was silent, except for the sound of the chains moving slowly, like they were alive. Carell sat still. Her body was calm, but her eyes burned like twin stars. The human watched her from the other side of the room. He wanted to speak, but something held him back. Something powerful was happening, and he didn't want to interrupt. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then she finally said, "I can feel it." He moved closer. "Feel what?" She touched the metal around her wrists. "My blood, my strength. It's trying to return." "But the chains, they still drink from me," he asked. "Can I cut them off?" She shook her head. "No, these chains are not metal alone. They're made of memory, of fear. They bind me not just with force, but with history." The human didn't fully understand, but he listened. That was what mattered. Carell looked up at him. "I need your help, not to break the chains, but to remind me who I am." He nodded slowly. "How do I do that?" "Believe I'm more than what they said I was," she replied. "Not a weapon, not a slave, but something they couldn't control." Outside, the wind screamed louder. Suddenly, a noise echoed through the shelter. Heavy footsteps. Someone was coming. The human stood quickly. He grabbed the old tool he carried for defense. Carell rose to her feet too. Even in chains, she looked like a queen in exile. The shelter door burst open. 3 bounty hunters stepped in, big, armed, faces hidden behind glowing masks. One pointed his weapon. "Give her up. You're not part of this." The human didn't move. "She's under my protection." The lead hunter laughed. "You? You're just a man, and she's just a rumor. A pretty one, but a dangerous one." Carell stepped forward. The chains dragged, but she stood tall. "I am more than a rumor," she said quietly. One of the hunters fired, but the shot didn't land. It froze in the air, stuck in a wall of invisible force. The human stared in shock. Carell closed her eyes. Her body glowed brighter now. The chains trembled. Dust lifted around her feet. She opened her mouth and spoke, a single word in her ancient tongue. The air shook. The bounty hunters stumbled back. Their weapons shorted out. Lights in their suits flickered. Carell took one more step forward. "Leave now," she said, in clear trade language. The hunters didn't wait. They ran. Silence returned. The storm outside began to fade. Carell dropped to her knees, breathing hard. The human rushed to her side. "Are you okay?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, but I used too much. These chains, they still take from me." He touched her shoulder gently. "We'll find a way, together." She looked at him, her voice soft. "You saw me. You saw what I truly am." He nodded. "And I'm still here." Carell smiled not with pride, but with relief. For the first time in years, someone didn't run from her power. Instead, he stood with her. Blood of Titans, the storm had passed, but something bigger was rising. Carell sat near the fire the human had built. The wind outside had gone quiet, but her thoughts were loud. She stared at the flames, her golden hair falling over her shoulders. The chains were still there, but now they seemed weaker, as if they knew their time was ending. The human sat across from her, waiting. He didn't speak. He didn't rush her. Carell finally said, "Do you know why they fear my children?" He shook his head. She looked at him. "Because they are not just strong in body. They are strong in spirit, in heart and will. We gave birth to those who couldn't be broken. And the galaxy has no place for the unbreakable." The human leaned forward. "Were you always hunted?" "No," she said softly. "Once we were honored. My kind were called the mothers of Titans. We lived on high worlds, our children led. Fleets, healed planets, created peace. But as we grew, others grew afraid. Not because we fought them, but because we didn't need them." He frowned. "That's why they put you in chains?" She nodded. "They wanted to erase us. One by one, they found us, sold us, silenced us, until I was the last." Silence fell between them. The fire cracked. Then she looked at him again. "But something happened when I saw you in the market. I felt something different." "What do you mean?" He asked. "You didn't look at me with desire or fear. You looked with purpose. You didn't want to own me. You wanted to understand me." The human didn't know what to say. He had only followed a feeling. But now he realized that feeling was bigger than he thought. She reached out slowly, her fingers touching his hand. "Do you understand what I meant when I said I would give you strong children?" "I think so," he said. "You want to pass on your legacy. Not to keep power, but to keep your people alive." Carell nodded. "Not just alive, free. My children will not wear chains." He asked carefully, "And you believe I'm the one to help you?" She looked straight into his eyes. "Yes, because you didn't try to save me like a hero. You stood beside me like a partner. That is what my kind always needed." The firelight danced on her face. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "If I die, everything my kind stood for dies with me. But if I live and if I trust the right one, our strength will return quietly. Through blood, through love." The human was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I will stay with you. Not because of what you are, but because I believe in what you're trying to build." Carell smiled. A real smile. Soft, honest. In that moment, the chains around her wrists cracked slightly. A tiny sound, but loud enough to hear. She looked down at them. "Did you hear that?" He nodded. "Then it's beginning," she said. "What is?" He asked. She looked up at the stars through the hole in the roof. "The return of the Titans. The hunter becomes the hunted. They thought they could hide. They were wrong. Across the galaxy, someone had been watching." The moment Carell spoke her ancient words to the guards, a silent signal had been sent. The kind of signal that wakes sleeping giants. Far away, behind dark stars, ships began to move. Heavy, black, and built for one reason: capture. Carell felt it before it happened. She stood on a hill of red stone, her eyes closed. The chains around her wrists had started to loosen, as if the metal itself feared what was coming. She opened her eyes slowly. "They are coming," she said. The human beside her looked up. "Who?" "The ones who destroyed my world," she said. "The ones who turned life into silence." They didn't wait. That night, the sky tore open. A fleet of dark ships entered the planet's atmosphere. Silent. No warnings. No words. Only one purpose: take back what they once claimed. Carell didn't run. She looked at the human. "This time, I fight." He nodded. "And I stand with you." They moved fast, heading toward the ruins of an old temple, one that Carell remembered from childhood stories. A place of power buried in the sand. It had been built by her ancestors before they were forgotten. As they reached the entrance, Carell placed her hands on the stone wall. Ancient symbols glowed under her touch. The doors opened and they stepped into the darkness. Inside, it was cold, quiet, and waiting. The human asked, "What is this place?" Carell looked around. It was once a home, a school, a cradle for titans. She walked to the center. The walls began to pulse with light. Her chains lifted slightly, then cracked louder. This time, she knelt down. "This place remembers me." But outside, the enemy had landed. Dozens of soldiers moved across the desert fast, trained and armed with weapons made to capture energy beings. They didn't speak. They didn't slow down. Inside, Carell stood tall. Her skin glowed. The last piece of her chains broke and fell to the ground. The human stared in awe. "Carell," she turned toward him. She no longer looked like a prisoner. She looked like a force. "They will come through those doors," she said. "When they do, I will not hold back." "Should I fight too?" he asked. She smiled. Gently. "You already are. You believed, and belief is the first weapon." The doors shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Then the first soldier stepped inside. Carell raised her hand, and the ground under him cracked open. More soldiers entered. The human took cover, grabbing his old weapon, ready to protect her at any cost. But Carell didn't need saving anymore. She moved like lightning. Her voice echoed through the chamber. The walls responded to her power. Stone rose, fire burst, and light wrapped around her like armor. She didn't kill. She didn't destroy. She stopped them without hate, without fear. One by one, the soldiers dropped their weapons, frozen by something they couldn't understand. Memory of what her kind once were. The human stepped beside her when it was over. "Why didn't you end them?" She looked at him. "Because my kind were never meant to rule through fear. We were meant to rise through strength." Then she reached out and took his hand. "This was not the final battle," she said, "but it was the first step. And now they know we're not afraid." Outside, the black ships left the sky. Inside, Carell stood free for the first time in her life. Asterisk children of freedom. Warships never returned. The galaxy didn't speak of what happened in the desert temple. But deep within powerful circles, whispers began. She lives. The last one is no longer chained. The bloodline has awakened. Carell no longer needed to run. She had broken the chains that held her body and the silence that crushed her. People's name. Months passed. On a quiet green world, far from the cities and soldiers, Carell lived in peace. She walked through tall grass, her hair glowing softly in the sunlight. Her eyes were calm, now no longer filled with fear, but with purpose. Beside her walked the human. He had stayed, not because of her power, but because of her truth. He had become more than a traveler. He had become her future. In her arms, she carried a child, small, new, a mix of two worlds, blue skin with human eyes, gentle hands that curled around hers, a heartbeat that felt ancient and new at the same time. They named him Elian. He will not be hunted, Corell said softly. He will not be chained. The human smiled. He will be free. Corell looked up at the stars. And one day, others like him will rise, quietly, peacefully, not to rule, but to remind the galaxy what real strength looks like. Back on distant worlds, powerful beings watched. Some were afraid, others were curious, but none dared to act. Not yet, because they knew something had begun. Something they couldn't stop, not a war, not a rebellion, a rebirth. The child grew fast, like all of Corell's kind once did, but unlike before, there was no army to train him, no empire to build. Only love, knowledge, and strength passed down from two hearts that refused to give up. Corell often sat with him under the stars. She told him stories of a time when her people were hunted for being too strong, and how strength without kindness means nothing. You are the first child of freedom, she whispered one night, not made by chains, but by choice. The human would watch from nearby. He had once walked into a market and heard a whisper from a cage. Now, that whisper had become a future. They lived quietly, but not in hiding. Others began to find them, not to take, but to learn. Lost children of Corell's people and new friends from other worlds. Together they built a small place where no one was sold, and no voice was silenced. It wasn't an empire. It was something stronger, a beginning. And when their child spoke his first words, it wasn't in one language but two. The human smiled. Corell cried, because chains can be heavy, pain can be deep, but belief is stronger than both. And from that belief, the Titans were not born again, they were reborn as something better, free.